Good morning, Carson. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Vince Solis, and I am the proud president at Western Nevada College. I've been in higher education the last 27 years. And over those last 3 decades, I have been on an amazing journey to help people change their lives through the power of education. But today, I'm not here to speak with you as a college president. Today, I'm here to speak with you as a high school dropout and the consequences that choice and that decision had on my life. The decision for me to drop out of high school was an easy one. I came from a family of 13 where only 4 graduated from high school. At the time, I thought dropping out of high school was going to be the answer to all my problems. It was going to be this answer that was going to solve everything, and it was going to be something easy to do. Nothing could have been further from the truth. My teachers advised me don't do it. My parents told me not to do it. My siblings had told me the same thing, don't do it. You'll regret it. And sure enough, I did. It was the worst thing I ever did, the biggest mistake of my life. And the best way I can describe it is like this. One day, you're a happy-go-lucky teenager, and then because of a decision that you make in an instant, your life becomes something captured in a cage of your own creation. The best way I can describe it is being in a box like this with a lot of different doors. And all of these doors lead to great opportunities. They lead to better lives, to better employment, more income. The problem is that all these doors are locked because you don't have an education, you don't have the skills, you don't have the necessary keys to open these doors. The only door that will allow you out of this box is a door that's listed and titled at the very top, a door to nowhere. So what I did was walk through that door because I had no other option. I didn't have the keys to open these other doors. And I did things like dishwashing, I cleaned floors, I hauled manure, I shoveled manure, I picked grapes, I sorted potatoes. I did whatever I could to get by. And I can tell you this, when you do lots of physical work, the one thing that you'll never need is a gym pass to be fit, because physical work does that to you. You'll never complain about a good night's sleep, because when you do physically demanding work, the minute your head hits the pillow, you're out like a light. One of the jobs that I did for a short while changed my life forever. I was cleaning cotton. And you think of cotton as an automated process, but there are still parts of the country where this is done by a person and a hand tool. And that was my job. And working in the cotton fields is different, not just because it's physically demanding, but because it's really hot. This is West Texas. The sun beats down on you, it's triple-digit temperatures, and then you're in a sea of cotton and everything just bounces back into your face, and it's just overwhelmingly exhausting with the heat. It's dusty, it's dry, you can taste the dirt in the wind. And one of those days, it was really hot, I had a dizzy spell, and I fell down. And one of the things that it's not like in the movies. When you fall down in the movies, it's in slow motion, you hit the ground, you stay there, and you relax until you regain your bearings. The dirt is really hot, so your body goes into instinct mode and says, get up. No matter what else is happening with your dizzy spell, you're getting burned on the ground. And I remember after getting up from that, I dusted myself off, and I asked myself, what am I doing out here? There's so much more out in the world, and I'm in this West Texas cotton field cleaning cotton. I didn't have an education, but at that moment I knew that if I was going to ever change my life, I needed to get an education. And for me, I always understood, much like the English philosopher Francis Bacon, who said that knowledge is power. But for me, it was more than just acquiring knowledge and information. It was about getting an education so I could get the credentials to open those doors. For me, an education was that great equalizer. It's what helps people get out of poverty. My life's work has been about educating others so that they have those same opportunities. And education is required for societies and peoples and communities to solve challenges, to answer questions, to come up with solutions to problems. But it's also what allows democracies to thrive. And education, as Nelson Mandela said, is the greatest weapon that we have to change the world. And I agree with that. But I also agree that an education is a shield to protect you from the injustices that the world can bring. And ultimately, for me, an education was that key that allowed me to walk through those doors that said opportunities, better life, better job, better income. And I knocked those doors down. Now, I wish that I could sit here and tell you that my story is unique, that I'm one of a high school dropout and you'll never hear of another one, but unfortunately, more than 1 million students each year in the U.S. decide to drop out of school. When you think about that, that's 3,500 students a day. In the time that it takes me to do this TED Talk, 60 students will have decided to drop out of school. They will change their lives and their lives of their families forever. And this is why I've always stressed that we need to push education and we need to ensure that the students get the right messages, because right now, students are different today than they were 15, 20 years ago because of technology. Students in this age group spend anywhere from 6 to 9 hours a day on their mobile platforms, and they receive all kinds of different messages. So let me tell you how things are a little bit different. For those of you that remember the age of radio, hopefully not many, right? But in the age of radio, it took more than 30 years for messages to filter to more than 50 million people. Then TV rolled around, about 14 years. Then the internet came about, it took about 4 years. Smartphones came around in 2007. It took about 3 years to hit that same market penetration of 50 million. But today, students are bombarded with messages all the time. The top 10 Instagram websites have more than 100 million followers on them. So the people that run these websites, celebrities, entertainers, sports figures, with a couple of clicks of their device, they can send a message to more than 150 million people. It becomes instant. And students get these messages, and some of the messages that I see out there, I see from businessmen, I see from entertainers, I see even from politicians that question the value of an education. And that may have been true for a few people that were successful without an education, but it's not true for the masses, and it's not true now because things are changing so much in our world. Let me give you an example of that. So in the early 80s, there was this thing called 24-hour news coverage. It was brand new. And they held and focused on those early years on a couple of very high-profile child abduction cases. And they gripped the American psyche, and we parented differently as a result. What happened was this concept of stranger danger. Don't get into someone's car because we'll never see you again. Stranger danger became something that was very prevalent in American society, and it spilled over into the 90s when the internet rolled around and we had chat rooms. So the message went from stranger danger, don't get into someone's car, to don't talk to someone on the internet that you don't know because you could disappear. And now when you think about things have changed, I pick up my phone when I travel, I get in a private chat room, I call a stranger that I don't know to come pick me up in something called ride-sharing service, right? The world has changed. When you think about it and you go back to 2007 when the first smartphones were developed, Facebook, I used to wish that I had superpowers when I was a little kid. And one of those superpowers was I wanted to read people's minds. But now I've got Facebook, and I know everything that's happening. But, it's also important for us to understand why people drop out, who they are that drop out, and how this impacts us. So when we think about who drops out of high school, it's mostly poor students. These can be lumped into 3 groups. The first group are poor students. Students from poor or low socioeconomic backgrounds are 2.5 times more likely to drop out than students from middle class or from upper class. It also impacts minority students. Hispanics and African Americans are disproportionately represented in the dropout rates. And then it's something that's happening more and more. Boys are being impacted by this phenomenon much more than girls. Right now, there isn't a state in the union that graduate more boys from high school than girls. Girls surpass the boys in every sector. So these 3 areas are who is being impacted. Now, why they do it is very different for a lot of different people. They do it because they're not fitting in school. There may be bullying, anxiety. They may want to go to work, drugs, gangs, becoming single parents. It's a lot of factors, but the consequences are the same for everyone. Higher unemployment rates. They're the first ones that get let go when jobs or the economy takes a downturn. They have higher incarceration rates. Think about this and how it impacts the community. High school dropouts commit more than 2/3 of all crime. So when we think that this doesn't impact us, it does. And I think that as we prepare for a changing world, it's important for us to understand the kinds of jobs that are being created. Right now, our world, we've got drones that deliver things. We've got artificial intelligence. We're growing meat in labs to feed the masses. We're able to tweak the DNA of fruit and vegetables. Think about this when you think about this changing world. Autonomous vehicles, students often tell me, well, I'm going to be an Uber driver. I'm like, yeah, well, Uber's in a few years not going to hire people to drive their cars. But think about this. It's not about the technology that's used to facilitate autonomous vehicles. Right now, the challenge is how do we download the morals of a community into these devices so that if they have to make decisions that will impact our safety or our lives, they make decisions based on what's important to the community. Wrap your minds around it a little bit. The world of tomorrow belongs to math, to science, to coding, to engineering, to technology, to manufacturing. And here's the concern. The jobs of tomorrow have the potential to be displaced by automation. Think of jobs in 3 sections: low-skilled, middle-skilled, and very high-skilled. The grouping of jobs in that middle section and that lower section have the potential to be completely displaced by automation over the next 2 decades. So that means that all the new jobs that are going to be created are in this upper level, where you require skills like math and coding, cognitive functions, mental elasticity, innovation, creativity. This is the thing that employers are looking for. Right now, employers tell us that most of new potential employees come to them with a skills gap because we don't have enough people with the skills to fill the jobs. And you can see these trends developing. There's 100,000 new jobs created every year in the tech field, but only about 60,000 people to fill them because people don't have the credentials, the certificates, the skills to do these jobs. The world is changing very rapidly, and it's not just about these digital disruptions. It's not just about how technology changes the world of work and who's going to access those jobs. The biggest concern for people that are interested in this is that the divide in income equality will grow. Because these 2 lower levels, it's not that you're not going to be able to do the job. There will be no jobs for you to have. So what will you access if you don't have a high school diploma, if you don't have a college credential? All the jobs that will be created in the future will be in this upper level. Jobs that require skills that you can only get through an education. But it's not just about these changes. Let's talk a little bit about Nevada. Right now, 2019 is a pivotal year for the United States. It's the first time ever that minority children make up the largest group of children in the U.S. Over the next 5 years, Nevada will become a minority-majority state. Cities throughout the Southwest will follow suit, and then that will happen to the country in about 20 to 25 years. So by 2040, 2045, America will become a majority-minority country. The challenge is that the biggest group of individuals that are dropping out of high school are in these categories. So how do we become and remain competitive as a city, as a region, as a state, even as a country, when we have the highest dropout rates amongst the students that are growing in the fastest population segments? Let me tell you a little bit about Las Vegas. It's a glittering city out in the desert, southern Nevada. It's an amazing place. But it's also like a giant crystal ball because Las Vegas is today what America will be in 30 years. But it also comes with the same kind of challenges that the country will experience in that time frame that we're experiencing now. Right now, Las Vegas, because of its shift in demographics, has the highest rates of dropout rates for Hispanics and African American students. It's number 2 in the country for students that are second language learners. It's like a giant crystal ball. We can see what's going to happen because of what's happening there now. So how do we address some of these issues? The first thing that I think is really important is that we become aware that this is a real problem for us. It's not a problem of one person or one person's family. Large segments of people who don't graduate from high school and then go on to college impact our communities. There's less taxes, there's more strain on resources, higher incarceration. We have to spend more money supporting that segment. So the first thing is let's be aware that there's a problem. The second thing is this. We can't make it easy for students to drop out of school. When I went through that process, it took me 30 minutes to get the signatures I needed. Go to a couple of administrative offices, here you go, out the door. Now, truth be told, I was probably not the kind of student you wanted to have in class, right? So when I went in there, I said, hey, I want to drop out of school. They're like, let's get you right out the door. Let's not make it easy for students. Lend your voice to legislators, to politicians, to people that develop policies, people that work in K through 12, because the demographics in our very own city are shifting very rapidly. We will be impacted by these graduation rates if they're not where they need to be competitive in this environment. So be aware of the problem. The second thing is obviously lend your voice to not making it easy to drop out. And third, create pathways. We know that not everybody's going to grow up to be a college president or a doctor or a lawyer. Not everybody wants to do that. But the jobs that are also least likely to get impacted by automation are things that require finite movement, like plumbing, HVAC technicians, Those kinds of jobs are important, but students need to have a pathway. And then the fourth thing that I would recommend to people is volunteer. You know, it's difficult to be a prophet in your own land. When my parents told me not to do it and my teachers told me not to do it, they're all in my sphere of influence. But maybe if I had an external mentor, a volunteer who would have said, well, it's not just that you're going to regret it, but here's why you're going to regret it. Who knows, maybe I would have listened. So spend some time investing in our community so that anybody that you know that even raises the question of I'm thinking of dropping out to go to work, intervene, intercede, make that stop. And I can tell you this, to a point, to a degree, I'm almost glad that it's our state that's dealing with this right now, because it gives us an opportunity to be national leaders in solving a very complex problem. When I think about Nevada, I think about the spirit of the people. This can-do, will-do attitude, we'll take care of it. This is the driest state in the entire country, but yet people have not only survived here, but they thrived. We've got this amazing city at the southern part of the state where 40 million people from all over the world come every year and dump $35 billion into the economy. We figured out how to be one of the smallest states and not have a state income tax. We're the home of Tesla, the home of renewable energy, logistics, manufacturing. We're the home of a very diversified economy. This state has people in it that can come up with answers to big problems like this. So while I know that the challenges are big and large, I also know that the spirit of Nevada can help us get through this, and we'll come up with the answers for it. Thank you so much for having me here today.